Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings podcast. Genealogy teaches you something early. The record is rarely clean, ink blots, misspelled names, ages that shift from census to census, people who appear, disappear, then show up again decades later with no explanation. When you study the past long enough, you stop expecting perfection. You start expecting the truth to arrive a little sideways. 2025 worked the same way. Some mistakes were loud. Others were quiet enough that I did not notice them until later. Most were not dramatic disasters. They were small choices repeated often enough to leave a mark. When you lay them out in order, they read less like regret and more like documentation. I'm writing this the way I would study a set of records, not to shame anyone, not to put on a show, just to tell the truth about what happened. So the next year starts with better footing. One mistake was assuming that experience always protects you. After years of research, writing, and problem solving, it is easy to think you can see trouble coming. You think you recognize the pattern. You think you already learned the lesson. That mindset can help, but it can also make you careless in a quiet way. It can make you skip steps that used to matter. In 2025, I trusted more than once that past success would carry me forward without the same level of attention. It never does. Experience gives context, but it does not do the work for you. You can see this in records. A man signs his name the same way for 40 years, then one day signs slightly differently, and the clerk indexes it wrong. Years later, someone cannot find the deed. A family repeats a story for generations, and the story feels solid, until the documents show one detail, never match the timeline. People get used to what has worked and forget that the world shifts around them. In my own work this year, the mistakes showed up as shortcuts. I skimmed when I should have read slowly. I assumed a process would hold because it always had. Those assumptions did not collapse all at once. They wore down the quality little by little. The cleanup took longer than the time I thought I had saved. Another mistake was treating time as if it would refill itself. I scheduled tightly. I stacked commitments close together. I told myself I would slow down later. That logic looks neat on a calendar and fails in real life. When the days are packed, one delay pushes everything else off track. When you run with no margin, even a small problem becomes a larger one. Time spent tired produces weaker work. It also shortens patience and attention. In genealogy, fatigue leads to copying an error forward. In everyday work, it leads to fixing the same thing twice. This mistake shows up in old records too. A farmer overworks the land. The damage does not always appear right away. The soil keeps score. A shopkeeper works without rest. The bookkeeping slips, and the debts grow faster than the income. You can watch it happen in the ledgers. In 2025, I learned again that time works the same way. You can borrow against it for a while, but the bill arrives. It arrives as missed details. It arrives as irritation that makes no sense until you remember you have been running too hard for too long. I also underestimated how often silence becomes its own mistake. There were moments when I should have clarified, followed up, or corrected something early. I waited instead. Sometimes that wait came from politeness. Sometimes from fatigue. Sometimes from thinking the issue would resolve itself. Silence rarely stays neutral. It fills with other people's assumptions. By the time you speak, you're no longer correcting one misunderstanding. You're untangling several. Court records are blunt teachers here. Someone fails to object. Someone does not answer a notice. The file moves forward anyway. Later explanations do not change what was entered at the time. The record is built on what was said and done when it mattered, not on what someone wished they had done. In 2025, I watched this happen in smaller ways. A missed message led to a wrong assumption. A delayed answer created confusion that could have been prevented with one clear sentence. The lesson was simple. Timely words prevent long cleanups. Another mistake was trying to solve problems in isolation. Genealogy keeps reminding me that Nobody lives alone, even when they think they do. Every person in the past existed in a network of family, church, neighbors, co-workers, and obligations. You can see it in baptism sponsors, in who witnessed deeds, in who showed up in probate files, and in who lived 2 doors down on a census page. In 2025, I tried more than once to carry things that should have been shared. The result was slower progress and unnecessary strain. When I finally asked for help, the solution was often simpler than I expected. There is a practical side to this. Multiple eyes catch mistakes. A second person notices the obvious thing you missed because you were too close to it. A second set of hands makes a heavy task manageable. There's also a human side. Working alone for too long narrows your thinking. It makes every problem feel personal, even when it is just a normal problem that comes with work. Old records show this plainly. Farms ran on shared labor. Businesses relied on partners. When someone tried to operate alone, the paper trail often shows trouble not far behind. Not because the person was bad, but because the load was too heavy for one set of shoulders. There was also the mistake of expecting consistency from people who had already shown inconsistency. Old court files are full of this lesson. A witness changes his story because that is what he has always done. A debtor fails to pay because he never did before. A man promises to show up and does not. The record keeps repeating itself, and anyone reading it later can see the pattern in minutes. In 2025, I occasionally acted surprised when a pattern repeated. The evidence was already there. I just chose optimism over documentation. This is not about becoming cynical. It is about being honest. Genealogy teaches you to weigh what people say against what they do. It teaches you to trust records more than wishes. This year reminded me to apply that rule outside the archive as well. When you ignore patterns, you plan badly, you schedule badly, you expect results that never arrive. Then you spend time and energy dealing with outcomes you could have predicted. Some mistakes were tied to attention. I skimmed when I should have read closely. I answered too quickly when a slower response would have been better. I moved ahead without checking one more time, even when the cost of checking was small. In research, one skipped line can send you down the wrong family for years. A single mistake becomes a chain. You add it to your notes. You build on it. You share it. Soon the error has a life of its own. In daily work, it is similar. A quick reply creates confusion. A rushed decision creates extra steps. A small oversight leads to an hour of cleanup. The time you thought you saved is the time you lose. This did not come from laziness. It came from hurry. Hurry pretends to help while quietly stealing quality. One of the simplest improvements I can make going forward is slowing down at the exact moments when slowing down feels inconvenient. Those are usually the moments when it matters most. Another mistake was starting things at the wrong time. Some projects were good ideas. The timing was the problem. I began them during weeks that already had too much in them. I started them without enough margin. I started them when my attention was already divided. In genealogy, timing matters more than people admit. A family that migrates during a certain decade leaves one trail of records. The same family moving 10 years later leaves a different trail. The timing changes where the evidence appears and how hard it is to find. In work and life, timing changes everything too. Starting at the wrong time can make a good idea feel like a bad one. It creates pressure that is not necessary. It turns normal tasks into a grind. Looking back at 2025, I can see places where a short delay would have made the whole effort smoother. That's not regret. That is learning. Not every good idea has to start right now. Related to timing is another mistake, waiting too long to pause. There were moments this year when I should have stepped back sooner, not because the work was wrong, but because the pace was wrong. Instead, I pushed through, thinking I could power past the strain. You can find this pattern in personal letters and diaries from the past. Someone writes about being worn down. Someone describes a season as hard, not because one terrible thing happened, but because everything piled up. You can also see it in business records, when mistakes multiply after long stretches of overwork. The handwriting gets messier. The math gets sloppy. The margins fill with corrections. In 2025, I learned to watch for early signs, the shorter temper, the slower thinkings, the feeling that everything takes more effort than it should. Those signs are not character flaws, they are warnings. A pause does not fix everything, but it prevents avoidable mistakes. It restores attention. It restores basic patience. It helps you see the problem clearly instead of reacting to it. Another mistake was failing to document decisions while they were still clear in my mind. In genealogy, a missing note can cost you hours later. You find a record, you think you will remember why it mattered, and then you come back weeks later and cannot recall what you saw. The same principle applies to daily work. When you do not record the decision, you end up having the same conversation again. You recheck the same details again. You rebuild the same reasoning again. In 2025, I trusted memory too much. I assumed I would remember what I meant, what I agreed to, or why I took a certain route. I did remember sometimes. Other times I did not, and I paid for it in wasted time. Documentation does not have to be complicated. It can be a short note, a clear subject line, a quick summary after a phone call, or a checklist that stays updated. The point is not to create paperwork. The point is to stop making the same decision twice. Another mistake was letting small problems become permanent. This is a classic issue in records. A clerk misspells a name, the next clerk copies it, the next clerk copies it again. Then the family sees the spelling in print and assumes it is correct. In time, nobody remembers the earlier version. A small error hardens into the official story. In 2025, this showed up in routines that were not working. A small inefficiency became the way we do it. A minor issue got ignored until it became harder to fix. A small misunderstanding got carried forward because I did not deal with it when it was still small. The solution is not dramatic. Fix the small thing early. Do not let it become the permanent version of the story. Another mistake was spending too much energy trying to control outcomes that were never fully mine to control. Genealogy teaches this quickly. You can do good research, use solid methods, and still run into missing records. You can follow a trail carefully and discover the courthouse burned, the census pages torn, or the family simply moved through a gap you cannot fill. You can control your approach, but you cannot control what survived. In 2025, I sometimes acted like a clean outcome was guaranteed if I pushed hard enough. When the outcome did not arrive, the temptation was to push harder. The better move is usually to check the process. Did I gather the right information? Did I communicate clearly? Did I set realistic timeline? Did I leave margin? When the process is solid, you can accept the outcome without spiraling. When the process is sloppy, you can fix it and move forward. This year reminded me to focus on the part I can actually control. If there is a single thread running through the mistakes of 2025, it is this. I occasionally forgot that accuracy requires margin. Margin in time, margin in energy, margin in conversation. When margin disappears, errors multiply. Not all at once, one at a time, quietly until the work starts to feel heavier than it should. Genealogy reinforces this truth constantly. Records created under pressure tend to be sloppy. Records created with care hold up decades later. The difference is often margin. Enough time to check, enough calm to think, enough space to ask one more question. I saw the same thing in my own year. When I had margin, I made better choices. When I had none, even simple decisions felt harder. Genealogy has trained me to read mistakes differently. An error in a record does not erase the person who made it. It tells you something about their limits, their pressures, or their world. It tells you what they were dealing with. It tells you where the system failed them, or where they failed themselves, or both. I am learning to read my own year the same way. 2025 was not a failure year, it was a documented one. The mistakes are now part of the archive. They sit there like notes in the margin, pointing to where attention slipped and where assumptions crept in. The value of writing them down is not punishment. It is clarity. It is knowing what happened and why it happened. It is turning a vague feeling into a clear record. Future researchers, including me, will know where to look next. They will know which patterns to watch. They will know which habits to correct early. They will know that the small things matter because they always have. That is the usefulness of mistakes when they are recorded honestly. They do not just mark where you went wrong. They show you how to move into the next year with clearer eyes and better margin. If you've got a hard-to-find ancestor you're stuck on, I'd love to hear about it. Just head over to ancestralfindings.com and click on Contact to send me a message. While you're there, take advantage of our free weekly genealogy lookups, explore thousands of articles, and enjoy hundreds of podcast episodes. We've been helping family history researchers since 1995. And if you're looking for even more, check out our Genealogy Gold Q&A series over on Patreon. Thanks for listening. And as always, happy searching.